We're going to conclude our look at the commandments God gives us in 1 John by going to chapter 5 and starting with verse 2. Really, this is not a command. This is not exactly a command, but this verse 2 has been virtually our theme verse throughout this little series on the commandments of God given to the New Testament Christians. So we can't skip over it, and I want to look at it with you. It says in verse 2, "By this we know that we love the children of God." Now, yesterday we talked about the fact that we are to love one another. Now, this is how we know that we truly, not just in some kind of a false way, but we truly love the children of God when we love God and do His commandments. So coupled with this obedience, or coupled with the love for one another, is obedience. And there is not a distinction. You're not going to be a Christian who loves people, but you don't obey God. The two go together. There's not a distinction between them. And you know that you really love the children of God, not just in some false or superficial way, because you also are one who live in obedience to Him. Now, here's our theme verse, verse 3. "For this is the love of God, that we keep His commandments, and His commandments are not burdensome." So let's take a look here. The love of God is this, that we keep His commandments. So don't claim to love God and not obey Him. Desiring to keep His commandments and endeavoring to do so is an evidence of our love for Him and His love working in us. But then he goes on to say this, "and His commandments are not burdensome." This is what we've looked at numerous times over the last few weeks. His commandments are not burdensome. Now, if you look at the commandments of God, or really any set of rules or laws that you don't like, that you resist, you don't find those things winsome. You don't desire them. You find them, in fact, burdensome. You find them painful. I don't want to do this. I don't want to get up and go to work. I don't want to obey my boss. I don't want to do whatever. And so those things, we might do them. We might comply out of fear, out of duty, or whatever. But we don't want to do those things, and so it's a chore. But the commandments of God are not burdensome. Why so? Because we love the one who gives them. And we know in His wisdom and in His love that anything He tells us to do is for our good. There's not a thing God tells us to do, not a commandment that He gives us, not a single one, that is not for our good. It's for our benefit. And so we know if the Lord has told us to do something, whatever, if we do that, it's going to be for our good. And so those commandments are not burdensome. And the second thing is commandments are not burdensome when we love the one who gives them. And who has given us the commandments but the one who loves us supremely, the one who loves us the most. And so they're not burdensome. In verse 4, he says, "For everything that has been born of God overcomes the world, and this is the overcoming of the world, our faith." So he said, you may not necessarily understand all that the Lord has called us to do. You may not necessarily always agree at first with all the Lord has called us to do. But by faith, we know He's a good God. We know He makes no mistakes with our lives. And we know He would not call us to do something if it wasn't for our good and His glory. And therefore, we do those things on the basis of faith. We believe Him. We trust Him. We take Him at His word. So if He tells me to love my neighbor, I want to love my neighbor even if it's difficult, because His commandments are not burdensome, because the one who gives them to me loves me, and He never fails me. I believe that by faith. I live by that. That's what He's calling us to be. And so His commandments are not burdensome. If His commandments, as we've looked through this series for the last several weeks, if these commandments are burdensome to you, then we need to readjust our thinking and remember the one who gave us these commands loves us so deeply, and He does these things for our good. And when we understand it from that angle, by faith, we obey Him, and we find that His commandments are not only not burdensome, but so very often very joyful. We will now tomorrow pick up some, or next week, start picking up some of these final little epistles at the end of the New Testament. I hope you can join us. You have a wonderful weekend in the Lord.